Okay, now we enter part two of the debunk of this hair thing, and just all of it all together in due process. But this is what I was talking about as far as a mummy. This is a clip, and I'm going to have to do just little small snippets of Bob Breyer's presentation. That on this, you can find this with just looking up Mr. Mummy, and you can see it in the top left-hand corner there. And people talk about Boris Karloff and the mummy and what did the mummy look like and Curse of the Mummy and all that type of thing. When back in the day, these are old filmmakers that have made the film shots and stuff. And Bob Breyer, look into all of the ancient Egyptian texts and everything. And oh, he took her away. So these are all the ancient Egyptian texts type thing that they have with them. And it's called the Book of the Dead. And it shows here a standing sarcophagus. And let me open it even more, but not let it go away. And you can see that what we have here are some very pale Egyptian women and a pale Egyptian god with a pale Egyptian who's dead now. And in this effigy that they show him, because he's going to the afterlife, he's no longer having to have his symbolic red ochre. Then it shows up on him again. Then he turns solid black like a shadow of an existence and makes it through the trial of death. And ta-da, and then he's back through. And the book is actually called The Book of Coming Forth by Day, and that's where the people get an idea of a shadow and a shade and a ghost from, and then all the things that come out of that. But so you see the workers here, and they're shown as being definitely men and tanned, and the women mourners are light colored. And this is a Caucasian thing where you can see it through the Greeks and Minoans, Etruscans, everybody around this area. Where the men are drawn a lot of times, and especially workers and things like that, are drawn tanned, whereas women, especially kept inside, priestesses and all these things, and priests themselves in Egypt, are shown as being very much pale. But this guy, Bob Breyer, he's been an Egyptologist for a long time and also had, I believe, a degree in psychology. And so he wanted to study ancient Egypt as a secondary. He had already done his PhD and everything, and this is a look at him whenever he was younger. Now he's a gray-haired man. This is 30 years ago, maybe 35 years ago, right here, by the way. At this point, I think somewhere around in there, 30 years ago. And so Bob knew the techniques, studied them all, the exact amount of duration of the ancient texts say and stuff, and 40 days and all that stuff is symbolic, and you see that in the Bible at 40 days and 40 years and 40 days and 40 nights and all these type of things. But I've shown you connections to the ancient Sumerians and where the flood story comes from, and it carried around the world with these ancient Proto-Indo-Europeans and everything. But that's neither here nor there in this video. You can see the pale people here too. So whenever they keep trying to say that they're Negroids, it's funny that all the priests and the goddesses and gods, women are pale, and well, the pharaoh right here is even paler than the priests are. It's shown he's almost a golden tan color. But oh, and I'll mention that there is something incorrect with this. This is a symbology supposedly in one showing. It's kind of two things going on at once. That this is supposed to be refilling of the body cavity and everything. Well, they do that before they wrap them, but if you look, he's had his secondary wrap and not put in the sarcophagus thing yet, right? That shapes look like the body, like the king tut thing that we like. So they would sleeve that over the top of it and put the other thing and then put that in a casket, right? Well, they didn't. They haven't even done that yet, but it looks like they're somehow still able to pour this stuff in, and the guy's kind of holding him open to do it, and the other guy's wiping the shellac that I'm talking about that's on him and everything. But they don't shellac this guy. They opt for just the natural desiccation, and those are the tools that he used, believe it or not, by the way. And they pull out some guts, so I'm going to cut a little bit of this out. And what I'm trying to get, I guess, is just the pictures that's important. And he's going to put them in canoptic jars and everything, just like they used to and like they talk about, and showing each one and which god they were and everything else. So he's going to do the symbology the same way, and he's talking about the processes they're going through. And here if we'll look, you can see how pale this person is. Now he's even putting in special ingredients along with the natron and stuff, just like said that they've done. And it's more of a Metal Kingdom version that he's doing here, and it's more of a complete version, by the way. They didn't have it to this level. This is the end of the Middle Kingdom, and before, and then after that, you know, they had, but look how pale he is. I want to mention, you know, how that's, you know, I'm an Irish, blah, blah, blah. I don't go out in the sun. You can see my skin color. I'm much darker than that. So is Bob. You see Bob's bib is white, and then you see his face. It's tan somewhat, but he's hanging around in Egypt, so that's just natural, I guess, to have something like that. But you can see how pale this person is and what they run him through. And so he goes through this process that he talks about, and they end up going back in and letting him go the 40 days, and they keep him buried under natron like they had in the time. And after the 40 days, they start to dig him out and, you know, slowly brush it off of his body, real slowly and carefully. And, you know, so they finally get it off his body, but you look at his legs, and you kind of see how brown it is there, but it's still got all the white dust on it. There's his feet. And so they take it in the other room, and they clean it off, and they start to go through the rituals that they have there. And so then they clean up the body like they do, and they ritually wash the body and everything, and just like they had before, and put a setting of anointing oil on it, even though it's already tanned up. And he's even got some of the symbology that would always be around in Egyptian. But if you can see the skin here, that's as dark as beef jerky. They're going around the chest right now, but this is dark as beef jerky. I mean, that is Hershey's chocolate dark. And they show the arms and everything in a minute too, but you can see, and there's the chest going across. So, you know, no fakery funny here. But you can see how he was lighter than Bob is. And here's how light Bob's arm is. Here's how light a white glove is. Not Caucasians and look like there, but still. And so he starts putting on the paste, but he has not shellacked the body. And so he skipped that state because he's going to pretend like the Egyptians did in those good ones I talked about in one, and that they've shown a lot of, that he did a good enough job that he doesn't feel like he had to do that point. And then he's putting in all these sacred symbols and a scarab over the heart and things like that. So he, and even some of the wrappings have on them actual sayings and stuff in the hieroglyphics. And as he rolls it out, you can see it written on it there. And I've put this in about 2 other videos, but of course somebody thinks all this is brand new when they start showing it to you next time. But look how dark that arm is. That's even darker than the belly. It's like chocolate dark. This thing is just black. And this was a fairly fat looking Caucasian man. Now he's very skinny looking, desiccated corpse. And so you can see the difference that it does, and whenever it does that beef jerky technique of quickly desiccating and drawing him out. Look how dark his hands are and his arms, the side of his body. There's no question that you're not supposed to be expecting a mummy to look like a Caucasian once it goes through this process, although just like it is shown in that picture right there in the book, that's a Caucasian king, that's a light-colored priestess, that's Anubis, and is also drawn as pale. And I can't understand why black people saying that. Well, they keep saying, well, white people are pale and they can't go out in the sun, and it's like, man, have you ever seen Beach Boys or anything? I mean, y'all, what do you want people to believe? They can't do it when people have stopped doing it now, but you do know what tanning beds are? And of course, that's what happened at the end before people had to legally, used to go out and tan. So they'd go out to the lake and lay out, and there was a lot of suntan oil on the market. Of course, that's now changed to sunblock because they realize it can be damaging to you, but you can go one way too far or the other. At least it's not causing us a lack or shallowness or rickets or a vitamin deficiency, so we're fine with that. So we're going to go back to this. So that was Mr. Mummy, and we're going to go back to right where we were, and right where it shut off the first time. And right where we were was where this girl looks like Cher, somewhat. But if you look, they put green eyes in her. I don't think they did genetics and find that, but that could be a wig. Or she could have short hair and be putting this big wig over the top of it. I'm not certain, but that's a recreation of Egyptian. These are recreations that they've made of what Egyptians, from the way their face looked and everything. So you can tell this is Caucasian. You, no matter if you made her a little darker, a little lighter, still Caucasian, braided hair, so on. And that's so this guy here, even though he's desiccated and shrunk up like that and got the little bent flat nose, they pulled the brains out the nose. This is what he would have looked at in life. Again, they're showing a green eye, and he looks like Yul Brynner. But of course, he's real dark there, shellacked and desiccated, and that's where you get that look from. Here's a recreation, but in bronze, of Iset Taif Nacht, right? And so, what is this? Does that say 10th dynasty? 10th dynasty? So this is a recreation on what that would have looked like. And another one, but they show blue eyes in that one, don't they? It's pretty easy to tell. There's another Yul Brynner look-alike. And another that looks like that somewhat, but more slender face. It almost looks like that, well, the guy from the Mummy movie, when it returns all the way back in, you know, first he's in the desert and then he turns back into him total. Looks like that. Although that guy's face is a little fatter than this, maybe. Also looks like Jean-Luc Picard, though. Let's continue. Yeah, alkaline nose, long hair. That's not Negroids don't have that, man. They just don't. And they try to show you some Egyptians currently living there. Of course, we know they have an Arabic cross and everything with them, but you can see how light he is in this picture and dark he is in that picture, the difference he gets between seasons and sometimes being in the sun and not. And same thing with this lady here. Of course, here's the Egyptian that we're comparing it to, and you can see how pale that is. And she's darker than that in both of these shots, but not this one. So how pale were the Egyptian ladies? And their men can be out working and farmers and out in the sun all day, and they're going to be a lot darker than suntan boys. But these ladies that work outdoor, they're always shown with darker hair. But is this a Negro, or is this somebody that looks like Cher? Yeah, this is Sonny and Cher. Let's span that so it's at least a little bit better. Again, another recreation, but not that fantastic, but it's one. Oh, look at the mullet. Another recreation. It's Caucasian. It's women pale, men drawn red ochre, just like in Grecian art, just like in Minoan, Etruscan, so on. Yeah, very alkaline pictures in that too. But this is also that weird mop wig style. And at the time, this is what, 5th dynasty, I think, 4th or 5th dynasty. So the earliest dynasties. There's some more famous than this, Rahotep and Nefret, and they have blue crystal eyes in them and so on. And there's a few males that have this style of hair too that are shown on them. But this is shown to have been a ringlet type thing where they would take it and shortened hair and bound it together and make mop wigs out of it, if you will. Another recreation. Another recreation. And in fact showing you how they do it and how much muscle and everything would be in certain areas and how forensic scientists do it today, and it works great for the FBI stuff. So come on, it looked more like Jean-Luc Picard. We won, you lost. Yeah, here's 2 versions that they made of this lady right here, 2 different companies, given just the skull look onto them. One of them has her head squashed a little more than the other. This one, believe it or not, kind of wins out on the idea because the top of her skull, they just have her hairline run down too far. That's all it really is. But then there's some different look in the eyes and so on, but you can see they're closely related. There's one that looks like Jesus and some Italian people. And while this is later in the dynasties, whenever they do facial reconstructions on them, a couple have been given out as craniometry without showing them the picture to go with and see how close they make it to the picture that was stuck to the casket. Some of them show to be quite a bit like it. Like this one here. I mean, he's showing a little bit more gape mouth and his forward lip out a little more, and this guy is very closed mouthed with it. He has a mustache. They do even give him stubble, but they don't give him a mustache. Looks slightly different, but not too different than each other. So it shows you it's a work in progress. and they've done it for these Egyptians. Yeah, and you can see non-prognostic jaws and so on, the alkaline nose and all that. This is traits that are of the Caucasians and not traits of, and are surely not sub-Saharan African or West Africans, which is what's claiming it in America. It's as much of the problem as anything is if they try to say there was some influx from maybe some East African thing, then they were like, we was, and it was like, well, no, and you didn't even know it existed. But these are some of the reserve heads that they had for the earliest dynasties. And I've heard people make a lot of speculation on them. And one of them that has puffier cheeks and stuff, and they try to claim as a Negroid even back then, is actually, they figured out, well, if this one is this one is that, then that's the girl, so this is a woman even. So no, that's not. And I don't even know if this is it from a different angle, but it looks a little bit different. But I think I can tell that's not a Negroid or in any way. And then you see like people like Sonny and Cher, and he's a little lighter and she's a little darker, but in a lot of cases she's very pale and he's a little lighter than this even too. It just depends, and of course they've only got about 6 colors going on at first of it, and like you see here, a lot of the green turned blue in older times because it did that thing that copper does. But you know, even dwarfs and so on. And oh, here's the cute little effigy where it's got their children, and they hold their uh, finger to their mouth, and it designates children, like children are supposed to be silent, or maybe, I don't know. There's another deal that tells you about it. An ivory tusk. This looks like it was done from a hippo's tusk. And yeah, Caucasians, light. How do you get this? How do you get light skin? You don't. You don't on Africans. You don't are Negroids. I shouldn't say Africans because North Africa is always Caucasians. Sub-Saharan, if you will. So they try to show that, sometimes even in black stuff. This is not a well-lit photograph, so it looks a little darker than you might think, but look how thick the eyebrows are. And real thick eyebrows are not a Negro trait, but worse than that, if you look at the hair that's made into a braid, it's very straight hair that's just been braided like a French braid. Very straight. Just coming out of the scalp, very straight. And of course, this is just statuary. Now, just short of this, though, the Greeks get very authentic looking statuary, but this is always seen as symbolic, and they're going to make things look, so on. But Greek is somewhat too. I'm sure all those people didn't look like Hercules and Adonis and stuff. Hercules and Adonis did, but then all the people that they show, nobody's fat, nobody's anything until just a certain time. Well, they got big noses on some of the statue. Yes, yes they do, and big lips. Yeah, just like this guy. Of course, this is one of the locals that are there now, and if you want another Caucasian representative, how about Ernest Borgnine? This looks like the Arabic version of Ernest Borgnine, if you will, and he had big wide nose to him too. So this is not, you can't claim everything towards blacks and so on. And when you look at hair like this and a facial structure, I mean, that looks like Chelsea Clinton. Somebody else it looks like, just with a jowl look. I forget who it is, but she talks very jowly when she talks. Oh, it's the girl from, what's that kid show? It's got the 2 girls. One of them's kind of a Mexican-looking, darker-haired girl, and the other's a blonde. There's the blonde right there, right? And the show's supposed to be about the black-haired girl or whatever, and it's what her name is. People don't know I'm talking about if they've seen kid shows. My kids have seen it, but I didn't watch it enough to have it engraved in my mind. Won't come out of it now. But there's, again, a woman with that hairstyle and the band across here. And, of course, hair doesn't grow in a band across like that. This is more of a headband, and she's wearing a wig thing. And that are all woven wigs, and there's a family of pale and tanned Caucasians. And tanned Caucasians, and it doesn't have the eye insets anymore. Somebody stole them, or they fell out, or did something. And ooh, that's a picture by a super Egyptian in the middle of one of his videos. But this hair that goes in and has this gold flakes that they put in it. What is that? In a minute, they'll show you a wig that goes exactly with this style of what they did, and this is just a little wood thing. A little wood thing that's like, this is her. This is an effigy or an essence of her. And what were they trying to make it look like? Well, a wig that shows up. There's another view of that same, parting in the center hair. Yeah, very European looks actually on this. But European like this guy, European like that guy. Well, some have noses that are big like that, but Mr. Bean. Yeah, I did a video about this tomb right here, and it shows you all the Caucasian Egyptians and how light they drew them, and everybody on that video. I didn't put the range on it whenever I put the video out. A couple of black people jumped on it real quick, and that's after contact and da 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 and everything. That's the 12th dynasty or whatever it was, and then they shut up. So that's more what an Egyptian looked like. Those crystal blue eyes that I've showed in other videos, which I could pop up right now. All you got to look up is blue-eyed Egyptians, and it'll show you some of the statues that have blue eyes in them, and they're the earliest of dynasties, all the way till about the 12th dynasty. They have them, and one more in the 18th, and even in fact, the famous Nefertiti statue has one blue eye still left in it. And I remember the fit that they had whenever they showed her recreation. But man, nobody ever thought that these were Negroes. Why are people trying to make some false belief, especially these West African type people that would have not even known Egypt or anything existed, at the time, and were quite primitive. I mean, maybe that's got to have some reason for it. And this is I believe, yeah. And so you can see that, yeah. He's got the little chin bob thing that they have on him, the long chin right here. But yeah, more like the dude from Pantera. Oh, and he's a dark man, and he's a pale woman. How do you get that? And it's and just Caucasian phenotype. Paint them green if you want to. It's a Caucasian phenotype. If you paint them green and say they're on Star Trek, you go, yeah, it was a white guy playing the part. It's not a Negroid face like this, and it shows the blushing and things that are on them. But that's a later recreation off a wall, so I don't know why they throw that in there. But that, and you can see the profile, and that's a Caucasian. Looks like Jimmy Stewart. And again, pale, Caucasian skin, and I'm an Irishman, and I get that dark. Hope that it shows up in the light this time. But look how long that hair is. This is like Cher, or man, this is, below bra line on the ladies. And look here, this one at least below bra line, slightly above bra line, but wow. Yeah, and Caucasian, you can tell, And a lot of people have said Asian because of the eyes, and it's because they draw that thing with the cutout that goes around the eye, and they draw the kohl around the eye. It's just it, and why do they need that eyeshadow and shade for the sun if they're black people who don't need that? And we need the sun, and it just gets way out of hand, and they try to find anything that can try to give them 1 inch in, and they won't look at any of all this knowledge that's accrued over thousands of years now. It's amazing, the non-cognition of it all. For every one of these has Caucasian hair to them, and even blonde, and they verified that it's not off any process or anything, that she has a reddish auburn type hair, that yeah, he is gray haired, and then it was stained back with henna, but naturally redhead. Ramses too. Moses is a redhead. Ramses, anything hooked up with the Ramses name is supposed to be a redhead, and also Seti, and anything to do with the Sets, and Set is said to be same as Typhon, said to be a redhead, and all these things. So they have it even in their theogony and type stuff, but people are going to try to blow that off too. Look at this guy. He looks almost like, he's a blonde-haired dude. He looks almost like Abe Lincoln, and blonde, straightish, curly hair that looks almost Greekish. Here's another picture of him, black and white, and yeah, from the side, he looks like Abe Lincoln. 77 years ago, Negroids started trying to say they weren't West Africans anymore. And it causes their own racism by their own hands, and all this problem that comes out of it. And then they try to act like something's getting taken away from them, and it's like the lie, so you can quit lying. Maybe now you can do something because you've been a pity party until then, or is it just a ploy because you can't do anything? Come on, try. Here's King Tut and what his recreation looked like. They don't like that. Yeah, every time they show some Egyptian in any movie, they don't like that. But look at this girl right here. This is jumping into the water, the diving woman. And here she is dancing. And that's a Caucasian, and long hair. Oh, it's curly hair. Yeah, it's curly hair. Cher had curly hair. Oh. She could straighten it out, too. Hey, all you got to do is curl your hair. My daughter's curly her hair. All of a sudden, black people are only people can have curly hair. How about this lady's hair? It's pretty damn straight. Looks like grandma. Not my grandma, but a grandma. They've already shown this picture here. But yeah, I wish they'd show the side view, and they do, and you can see how straight his hair is. This is way back in the dynasties, you know. This isn't no modern thing. These are all the way through the dynasties. There's a woman there. This is the one again that looks like Christopher Reeve, if you will. Yeah, there's the one of the statues of the men that have that parted hair that look just like the women before then. But in this one, he doesn't have the crystal blue eyes, but you can tell that's a Caucasian so easily. It's not funny. Obviously a wig on this guy, but see how he's got green on his eyes, and they show it smeared up under their eyes like a baseball player. Not necessarily so clean, just a line around, but extra. And what is that? In order to highlight their eyes. What did he have, green eyes? I don't know who chipped their eyes out. This one didn't fall and land on the nose or nothing. Somebody chipped their damn eyes out that are green. But, oh, we'll just leave that aside. How about this one over here right next to it? Those are crystal blue eyes. Bing, bings that show up in here. Crystal blue eyes. Well, that's a Caucasian. You can tell from the look of it. Wearing a mop on his head. Oh, just the color of his skin, even on that statue especially. Again, another picture, girl, long hair. But if you found somebody on a tomb with blonde hair, what if that, you know, there's a lot of workers that are tanned to have blonde hair. We've shown a lot of those, but you ever seen one of these fancy wigs and it's done and it on purpose, blonde hair? No, usually they're done dark. Yeah, but it's still long hair. It's still Caucasian hair, and it's still a Caucasian woman. And then they find the Amarna period. No, that might have been black people. No, we know now definitely that was symbolic, and they didn't have an egg head. The skull shows it, you know, so no. And then here's the mourners on the wall. And while they show them light, dark, that's just a little tanner and a little lighter, and they do that when they're side by side so you can see the different arms and things, you know, in most photography, just like they did the two arms here differently, and it kind of shows, but either one of those are meant to depict a Negroid, of course. These are Egyptian mourners, Egyptian women. And you would say maybe some Egyptian now living today that has a little more admix in him than possibly they did before and is more Arabic would look like an Egyptian like that. And you can say, yeah, well, he looks a lot more like this guy. But one thing, this is that scribe with those crystal blue eyes. With those crystal blue eyes. And this is so Caucasian, it's not funny. He looks more like that guy that's on the news, or that one dude that played on the space show that one time and everything. He's got more of a glare on his face. And, you know, this guy does look more ethnic. You must agree that that guy more ethnic. This guy. Oh no, that guy was more ethnic. This guy's, yeah. So, oh, and here's one of the only, you can barely make it out, but even on the wall, blue eyes. Because you literally just put a dot in them, but this actually has a blue eye with a dot in it. Right, on the walls. But, you know, and here's the side lock. And strangely enough, they say this is on a girl. And then the guys came out and they go, that's not a girl, it's a male. Right, so, but long hair. Men had long hair back then, just like hippies or whatever. Yeah, and that's another way to show it. It's not black people, but this hair, if you can even tell, even if it's black and white, this is said to be a chestnut brown with light and blonde highlights. I believe in later, even in a paper, it's trying to describe this, so we can look back at it and later you care that it was more auburn chestnut with lighter highlights. So this is one of those red ochres, and it's just torn up pretty much, but you can see the Caucasian hair, and it's kind of plaited over, but then also nasal slit gives it away, at least the nose when it caved away, and the thin lips. And the nasal slit is real thin on a black person. It more, I guess, the shape of a spade or whatever, you know, like in cards, you know, and ours looks more like an A, in fact, a very squinchy stand-up A, more of an A, you know, type of, but it's a heart shape still, but there's that broad difference. It's one way they easily tell skulls. And while, here's that queen tie, and while they've touted that always as being an afro right there, this is actually Queen Tie herself, and they didn't shellac her. She ended up still staying pale with a little bit of staining. Not even as bad as that guy we were just looking at. Yeah, that Bob Breyer had done and been so pale. So what color is she? Well, you wood, what this was made out of, whenever they made it for her and put it in the burial, also was pale. Yew wood is lighter than pine, light as pine. It's real light wood, you know, not as light as balsa or ash or something, but it's real light. And so that's what indicative color is. And this is just a silver veil right here with pins stuck into it. And why is it all bushy up? That's an afro. No, it's not. Again, we will look at, if they CAT scan it, they found that it has a headdress of a pharaoh on it. And these two pins come out of the things that run, and that's what that is, yeah. That she has, and has a band onto her, that is it. And this is a silver veil, like a doily, stuck over her hair. Isn't that pretty? Isn't that Caucasian pretty? If I was to tell you that they found the face of Caesar with that red curly hair, but no, that's one of the Egyptian pharaohs. This one is famous. This is Hemwenu. He is said to be the architect of the Great Pyramid. Right there. And back then they didn't stylize everybody so much, and I think you can really tell what he looks like. And again, Caucasoid, Caucasian, with a thin little mustache, almost looks like Freddie Mercury there for a while. Here's something that's very telling. Look how straight their hair in these photographs. Can you see how straight their hair is? But also very interesting, their hair is red. They painted it red, solid, bright red. Yep, red hair. Yep. Oh, Sonny and Cher, I got you, babe. And so they get mad whenever they show photographs of something that looks like this, but sure enough, this is something which would have been much more accurate. And while this girl that works out a lot and outside things does have quite a bit of tan and color to her, the inside too here, the priestesses stay fairly pale. Like this. Here's a recreation. I always like this one. They did the face, and a lot of people didn't like it, and said that they were trying to whitewash, and that it looked a little too much like Pretty Woman, like the movie. Yeah. And so they took one of the wigs that go on them and put it on there, and they go, yeah, see, more like that. And they go, we didn't change anything, that's just the wig that's on her face. And so this is what they look like whenever she came back again, and they go, see, you made it look more ethnic now. And they go, no, I didn't, it's just the braids, just the hairstyle, it's the same girl, that's it. Yeah, so they like that one then, but then black people still didn't like it. So you see these pale people and stuff, and it's darker over here, but you can see that's a stain on it because their arm's lighter and so on. But oh, and so many of those have shown Negrocentrics taking and photoshopping it, and that's disgusting. You can tell where they, yeah, I can show you the picture and then show you what they're trying to show you, like they're black, and they're not. They're just still that red color and the tan ladies. But look at how big they drew the green under her eyes. Now her eyes have been scuffed out for some reason again, but the remnants right here, and whenever the archaeologists talk about it, they say it's still got a bit of green left right there in that eye. You can see it around the iris of it, but below the eye, not eyeshadow above the eye, but below the eye. And you can tell there's, what's up with that? Well, it makes sense. Whenever they're doing eye reflecting, that's what they do in baseball, is do it like this. They don't do it over the eye. Over the eye comes a little bit later. Oh, this is of the earliest dynasties here. I believe she's like 6th dynasty or so on. You can see the thick eyebrows on her too, but they do it for beauty later above the eye, but in reality they might have done it like this all the way through, and whenever they draw the art, knows that it doesn't look as pretty having that on there, so they would not necessarily do it. But in these early ones show it, and of course they made it out of coal, and other times they made it out of green. Caucasian. Another reserve head from the earliest dynasties. So when they try to say they're black people or they were Bedarians had a big. No, they tried to say a bunch of curly head might mean there was some influx to Bedarians, and let's see how much Bedarians have influx into the Egyptians as they came in together. See, there's people act like, oh, they were just running around amok, and then all of a sudden Narmer came in and boom. No, they had Upper and Lower Egypt, and it was going on for a long time before, and pretty much consolidated as each, but they wanted to come together, North and South, of the Americas, and come in to be America, to do Egypt. If you said it was just trapped on the Mississippi and that was the only fertile part, like, who knows if something terrible happens and you end up where it all turns to desert in America, but we're left with just the Mississippi running down and what we can agriculture off of that. There's our little Egypt. In fact, we have Memphis and other names that go right along with it to mimic it because we know of it and we know of that and it's famous. It's like New York, New Hampshire, all those places and everything. Yeah. So, but ironically, Nova, that also means new too. So Nova Scotia, that means New Scotland. Why did they name it that? So people want to show pictures like this and the big flat wide nose, but I just showed you the man with the big flat wide nose. And you see how light they draw the skin in that, but they always want to show those type of pictures too. That doesn't mean anything, and the chin beard and all that type of stuff. And so, what's the truth and reality of the first all in ancient Egyptians? And I don't think anybody's willing to try to even say that that's a Negroid right there. Yeah, it looks almost just like a department store mannequin. And during their first few dynasties, they didn't have the exact symbology they were going to go with, and where everybody kind of looks the same within a certain realm. It seemed like that carried all the way to the Amarna period. But these are your Caucasian Egyptians, and that's more stuff about hair. I've got another thing pulled up that I could add to it, but I think we'll just go right here because it's a good stopping point. For this, it's like a 4th dynasty reserve head. There's 5 or 6 of them. They all look like this. Like, share, and subscribe, and enjoy, guys. Peace.